Individual autonomy is to be one's own person, to be directed by considerations, desires, conditions, and characteristics that are not simply imposed externally upon one, but are a part of what can somehow be considered one's authentic self. Autonomy has traditionally been thought to connote independence, and hence to reflect assumptions of individualism, both moral thinking and political designations of political status. Autonomy plays various roles in theoretical accounts of persons, conceptions of moral obligation and responsibility, the justification of social policies, and in the numerous aspects of political theory. Individual autonomy should also be distinguished from freedom. Although there are many similarities of these concepts, some conceptions of freedom will be equivalent to what is often meant by autonomy. Generally, one can distinguish autonomy from freedom in that the latter concerns the ability to act without external or internal constraints and with sufficient resources and power to make one's desires effective. Autonomy concerns the independence and authenticity of the values, emotions, and etc. that move one to act in the first place. The autonomy that grounds basic rights and which connects moral responsibility, as this concept is thought to do, is assigned to persons without essential reference to other people, institutions, or traditions within which they may live and act. Autonomy, it is argued, implies the ability to reflect wholly on oneself, to accept or reject one's values, connections, and self-defining features, and change such elements of one's life at will. Examples of individual autonomy include freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom to do things how one sees fit, and freedom of thinking.
Individual autonomy is essential for a society that is ruled by a benevolent leader, because with the current regime in China, the Chinese Communist Party can execute anybody if they think you're going against the government in any way, shape, or form. This could be, for example, a small protest or even just bad-mouthing the current regime. This will also rectify the CCP's blatant disregard of the rights given by the Chinese Constitution and hopefully decrease the amount of capital punishment given out over time.
If you were going to give citizens civil rights such as the freedom of assembly, then the CCP would lose most of its power. Most of the CCP's power lays in the controlling of its citizens. As more rights are granted, the CCP would lose complete grasp of the state. If there was too much of individual autonomy, it could lead to total anarchy or democracy, which is not what Confucianism as an ideology wants. Confucians and Confucius wanted strong social order.
To understand China is to understand this fundamental idea of social order and the importance it's held throughout China's history. Since its earliest days, land was held and passed down through large patriarchal family clans. This is important to keep in mind. Another very important concept to understand is that of necessity. Necessity, and even morality, had almost alien connotations in humanity's past. Fast forward a few thousand years from ancient China to the Industrial Revolution, when advancements towards ease of living allowed us to do something we were unable to do on a large scale in the past: live for more than survival. But prior to this key turning point in our history, humanity was at the mercy of the elements and other challenges we can now take for granted. We must consider our ancestors and the documents they left us, including Confucianism, from this perspective, and not our own moral perspective. In the past, morality could be defined by simply surviving and ensuring your family, society, dynasty survived. Why would a person from the past consider something immoral or moral? Because it either helped or hindered survival. Morality helps us survive, and to survive, we also need systems of power and belief that maintain order in some form or another. In China, The system of patriarchal power was kept in play by maintaining societal order and cohesion, tied in with ancestor veneration and the mandate of heaven, which was believed to be held by a ruler who had certain merits, namely maintaining order in the favor of the people. This power play stretches into both faith and politics, and has been used as a basis of legitimacy by every regime of China. Truly, what constitutes societal order is not well defined. Confucian teaching would seem to indicate that order need not exist for the sake of quality of life, but for simply keeping the patriarchy in power. If the patriarchy is in power, then the lives of the citizens under it must be optimized as well, by extension. From the government's perspective, societal order means to keep the CCP in power, and to have no real opposition. Communism finds its core strategies in force and direct takeover and holding of government. It is not a peaceful revolution. Both Mao and Stalin implored government purging and suppression of rebellious elements of society to maintain power for the communists. Though a secular government, the communists have used Chinese history and culture to their advantage in claiming legitimacy.
Social order is necessary for a Confucian type of government. Confucius himself places unity and social order above all, and social order will possibly lead to more political executions, but if the CCP has the mandate of heaven, then it is justified.
Complete social order leads to complete control over its citizens, better known as totalitarianism. If complete control is given, then the citizens of the CCP lose all given rights from the written constitution.
In Confucianism, there are many different ethical principles that are expected to be followed by a follower of Confucianism. They are all linked to the principle of Ren, which means to have a sense for the dignity of human life and a feeling of humanity towards others and a self-esteem for yourself. The principle Yi is in accordance with someone's morals and their sense of righteousness, and it is necessary in order to achieve Ren. It is when the quality of righteousness becomes associated philosophically with the act of self-realization. It is righteousness, or the ability to tell what is right and good, and Confucius said that it is innate for people to know what is right and what is wrong. It points to someone's moral intuition, and that these actions are expected to be performed solely on the basis of them being the right thing to do, not because of the outcome that is expected. If you are doing something as a means to an end, then you are, in terms of Confucianism, not acting in accordance to Yi. An example of this may be returning something that someone has lost or something that was stolen, not because you are expecting some sort of reward for your behavior, but because you know that returning the lost item would be the right thing to do. It is hoped that these acts of self-righteousness will lead as a good example for the other people around you, and encourage them to act in accordance to Yi as well. And that way, soon, all the people around will be doing what is right simply because it is right, and not for selfish reasonings. Sometimes the right thing to do might not lead to the best outcome for you as a person, but it is the better outcome overall for someone else. And this can also apply in terms of capital punishment, because the act of killing someone may be seen as the right thing to do to some, ignoring the outcome of death, or sparing someone may be seen as the right thing to do, and ignoring the outcome of the victim's family not getting revenge. It could all be a matter of opinion based on what they think is right and what is not right in a situation like that, since Confucius does not really go into detail about capital punishment.
Yi is important in this topic of discussion because a society with high moral intuition could lead to more protests against the CCP, against its treatment to the people, and the massive amounts of executions happening, which wouldn't happen if the CCP has the right to rule given by the heavens, better known as the mandate of heaven, that can be transferred from one person to another if they are found unworthy.
Yi is not necessary in the eyes of the CCP, as the citizens do not need to have high moral intuition. The more control the CCP has over the citizens, the better they can be governed. The executions are necessary as it needs to be done to maintain order among the dissenters. As long as Li is being kept, then the CCP will have the mandate of heaven.
In our contemporary China, there are a lot of sacred religions that are considered by many Chinese citizens. However, Confucianism is one of the most influential religion and system of thought that are practiced and kept holy by most of these citizens for centuries and still remains as an important aspect of the China civilizations. It formed the basis of imperial ideology and was reflected in sacred rites of Confucius to ensure harmony and social order is achieved between human beings, the cosmos, and for the selection of the administrators. It also rules the fundamental of social and family ethics, which we have taken into consideration when deciding whether or not capital punishment is justified for political crimes. There are 5 virtues in Confucianism: Hong, Jiao, Ji, Yi, and Li. As one of our religious principles in determining whether punishment was righteous, we have chosen the principle of Li and decided to maximize it along with the social order. But what is the Li principle basically imply in the Confucian ideology? Li is one of the guiding principles of all things great and small as stated in the Analects chapter 1, verse 12. It has several meanings: ritual, etiquette, propriety, and ceremony. It signifies the ideal behavior, ethical, moral, and righteous actions to which the government and the individuals must carry out in order to be self-cultivated and conduct appropriate behaviors. It outlines the rules of behavior that is conventionally considered to be righteous and justified for social relationships and human interactions, such as the filial piety, which are deemed important in the realm of the government. Li provides a template for appropriate action for the individuals to perform and how it should be treated if individuals go against it. If a person have done unethical actions, then according to the principles of Li, he or she must be re-educated of these principles and able to keep the social order. However, sometimes re-educating a person who have done actions that are beyond the moral code is not the best solution to do, since these individuals may keep on doing those things even after they have been re-educated. That is why politicians who partakes with corruption, bribery, anti-socialism, and etc. are often convicted of capital punishment to control the crimes that may impact the social order in China's community.
Li should be an important part of the CCP's ideology because without it, the Chinese state will lose control of social order and at best they will make a non-benevolent government, which is not what Confucius would have wanted, leading them to lose the mandate of heaven.
A negative of Li is if one person does something along the lines of capital punishment. For example, not only he will take the blame for the crime, but his entire family, often leading to said person being shunned or disowned because of the dishonor that was brought to that family and community, keeping in mind the strong sense of filial piety and social hierarchies.